All right, folks, I'm sure you can see and probably hear, but the next step in finishing off, I keep calling it a deck. It's not really a deck, it's a three-season room now. But the next step in finishing it off has been complete. I've spent the past couple of days doing all of the sheetrock that you see behind me. So, there's still work to be done. Right, you can see there's some gaps and stuff. Some of those will just be able to be filled with spackle or mud. Some of those will have to go and just squirt a little expanding foam in to fill the gap and then trim it off. But for the most part, all of the drywall is up everywhere. Again, some of this is a little rougher than I'd like, but it'll do the job. So it'll be the process now of just throwing out all of the excess material. There's a ton of all this extra stuff, so I'm gonna have to get a dumpster to just toss this, plus the rest of the product, and all the pieces of cut off studs and all the garbage from earlier on. Get rid of all that. Then it'll be run around, check for clickers, right? That's any time where there's a screw that's kind of, if you run a putty knife over it, it'll click, that it's a little bit proud of the sheetrock. So run around, check, there's a ton of screws. Check all of them, make sure we have no clickers there, make sure that's good. Any expanding foam in any spots where we need it, where there's not enough for the mud to stick to. And then it'll be the long and arduous process of tape and spackle this entire thing. And then the even longer follow-up process of what I always feel takes forever of sanding everything. And then we're finally at the point where we can do paint, finish the electrical floors. I will feel very good once I have lights out here and outlets that work. Now, I could put the outlets in now, but I figure why run the risk of getting paint on them, of getting spackle kind of in the outlets and stuff. So I'll just wait. And then we're gonna do a beadboard wainscoting, up to the underside of the windowsills. So that means the paint will be a little bit easier because I can just stop below the window. So I just get a big roller, go right to below the windows, stop, and then I'll put the beadboard up. But once I get the ceiling painted and all finished, then I can install these 3 fans and lights and run that wire into the panel. So at least any future work that I do out here, I'll be able to have electricity, I'll have lights so I can see, and I'll also be able to turn the fans on so that if I'm letting the paint dry or spackle dry or whatever it might be, I could have the fans on to help kind of expedite that process. Another thing that had to happen for the sheetrock is we had this old storm door, and that was back when we used to just have this as a traditional deck. So this is our back door. And the storm door used to sit here so that way the dogs could have a dog door to come outside. Well, let me spin it around and show you why that's different now. So we added this door, which is a much sturdier exterior door with a significantly more substantial hard plastic dog door. So basically you had this storm door, which has like a vinyl flap that sat here around this door, and then there was a traditional exterior door. So we could leave this door open and then have the storm door, and when it was just a traditional deck, it allowed the dogs to come in and out, and it kept, it was a storm door, so it kept things relatively conditioned. It didn't get too cold. Well, now, since we built this on, they're really heading out this door, and then you had the storm door, and then this traditional door here had no purpose other than if we needed the dogs to not get out, you could shut that door. But to be able to get the sheetrock to come flush around the door, I need to take the storm door off. So what I'm actually going to end up doing is it's ordered, it's on a delayed delivery because it's taking forever, but I'm going to ditch this entire door here and replace that with one of these doors. Same kind of thing over here. So that way, 9 times out of 10, you'll have a true traditional sealed exterior door on both sides, but it still has access for the dogs to come in and out. And then it has like a plastic, where is it? Like a hard plastic door that you can just slot in if you need to keep the dogs from getting outside. And that should also, in theory, make it warmer in general, because that'll be a better sealed door. You know, it'll be a pre-hung door, so I'll tear out the old one and install that one. And then I was also thinking, it's not the most energy efficient way, but if I wanted to like pseudo condition this space, I could just leave this window open, and then all the heat or cooling potentially that's going inside could also slowly matriculate outside. So then I'd have heating and or cooling. In fact, this room is pretty well sealed. Once it gets to the winter again, we can take the thermal camera and see if we have like any severe areas where we're losing heat or cold air is coming in. But I mean, that'd be pretty cool if we were able to just open a window and then allow conditioned air in, and then hopefully the room being as tightly sealed as it is will prevent any of that from leaving, so we'll be able to actually heat the room by just kind of ambient sort of pass-through heat, which would be pretty neat. So anyway, like I said, I know this isn't for everybody. This content is stuff that I'm more or less doing just for me, so when I get old and grayer than I already am, I can look back and be like, hey, look at what I did back in the day. So I don't know. Let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. I saw some people in the last video said, hey, we're first-time homeowners, and you mentioned that you look, you're always doing research. What do you look for? So I figured I'd take this as a quick opportunity to say there's tons of people out there that do DIY content or are builders, and you can learn from them. So there's a handful that I always go back and check with, but depending on what you're looking to do, you may be able to find a specific channel. Like if you're looking to do plumbing, there are a couple of plumbing channels. I will always stand by This Old House. It's one of the show I remember watching as a kid with my parents on PBS. Their YouTube channel is very good. They also have a ton of free apps on streaming services and like Fire Sticks and stuff. So you can watch lots of episodes of This Old House. Probably more specific would be like Ask This Old House, where people ask, questions and then they get a specific answer, as opposed to This Old House, which is like a larger project, though you can still learn stuff from that. So I would say that would be my go-to as just like a general rule, and they're usually really good on keeping up with best business practices, as well as keeping up with, just in general, the current sort of meta of the building world, if you will. So yeah, again, I can make a full list if people really want to know what channels I go to specifically for certain content. But anyway, let me know your thoughts and opinions in the comments down below. I'll see you all next time.